So, ladies and gentlemen, the year was 2006 when it was the Sheila Dikshit's Congress government in Delhi, and it proposed setting up a waste to energy plant in the national capital. A plant that will take the mountains of garbage produced every day by Delhi, incinerate it, and create energy in the process. 6 years later, the plant becomes operational in Okla. It was touted as a model waste to energy plant, which was processing 2,000 tons of waste daily and generating 23 megawatts of power. However, the celebration was short-lived, as just a week after the plant became operational, residents from nearby areas started noticing dust accumulating on their clothes, inside their homes, on their cars, and then they started noticing that they were coughing up a black phlegm, and then they realized something was amiss. What has happened now that in a 5-year investigation by the New York Times, it has been revealed that this pioneering plant is apparently exposing 1 million people of Delhi to highly toxic emissions. These include significantly high amounts of cadmium, lead, manganese, arsenic, and cobalt. All of these are extremely hazardous substances, and long exposure to them could be fatal. The residual ash from this plant has also been dumped in the residential area, which means the air also poisonous to breathe.
In an ironic turn of events, a plant that was supposed to make headlines for its contribution towards green energy is now under the lens for alleged violations of environmental norms. Currently, we're standing ahead of the Okla waste to energy plant here near Sukhdev Vihar. It's a residential area, and on your screens you'll be able to see the Timarpur Okla waste generation incinerator. In fact, this plant processes around 2,000 megaton of municipal solid waste every day and generates some 25 megawatts of power. But what is concerning is a byproduct of burning the waste that is supplied by the municipal corporation is toxic ash, as heavy metals, and is polluted air that is emitted near residential areas. Now, residents and RWAs as well as environmentalists have been protesting for years, even before this specific plant was built, complaining of how the waste in the national capital is not conducive to be burnt in incinerators such as these on your screens. Now remember, the graded response action plan stage 2 by the Central Pollution Control Body CAQM is in action, as well as a campaign by the Delhi government against open burning of waste. However, so far we do not see a mention of waste incinerator plants like these in either the CAQM plan or in the plan of the Delhi government. As a resident over the years, what impacts of the waste to energy plant have you witnessed in a personal capacity?
Okay, so I have been living here since 2013, and I have been myself finding that my own energy levels have gone down, and I keep getting irritation in the eyes, foreign body sensation, a lot of itching, redness. There's a lot of throat irritation. I'm almost the whole day I'm gargling in between. And of course, we have problems like a lot of black soot on the clothes, and so many times we can't even eat food without closing our doors. Because nowadays the headaches have really gone up, the cough is consistently there, and choking sensation is there. We are not going out for walks, we are all the time indoors. So it gets really worse in winters, but it is there throughout the year. So a very common thing that I find is in pregnant women, like they do have some breathlessness because of the changes, the growing fetus. But here I find that women are all the time complaining of suffocation, breathlessness. I mean, all the symptoms of pregnancy get much worse because they are in this area.
Now, obviously, the question arises as to who is to blame. And from what we understand, every political party is somewhat to blame. Let's start with the Congress. Now, Congress, of course, gave a go-ahead to this plant in 2007, but did not close it in 2013, despite in 2013 the NGT finding out in its report that this plant was using Chinese technology for incineration, something which was not verified, not approved. Then in 2017, the NGT actually applies a fine of 25 lakhs onto this plant, but does not close for violations of procedure, but does not shut it down. Instead says that we will monitor this plant to ensure that there are no further violations here. Now, remember, the NGT comes under the central government. Just like in 2013, there was the UPA government in center. In 2017, there was the BJP government in the center. And it has been ever since. And then, of course, there is the Aam Aadmi Party here. And also, by the way, the central government, in fact, the Ministry of Environment and Forest in 2020 actually asked for the expansion of the plant, in fact, from 16 megawatts to 23 megawatts, an expansion of almost 50% of its capacity, a plant which has already been fined twice, once for 15 lakhs, one for 5 lakhs. Then, of course, there's the Aam Aadmi Party. It continues to be in a PPP partnership with the Jindal Group that operates this plant. It still has not taken a decision as to how this plant is being allowed to go on. Let me go across now to my guests who are joining me at this point here. We have a good power-packed panel, and I'll try to make this conversation as educative and informative as possible. Dr. Anil Gupta, spokesperson of the BJP, is joining me. Also, I'm being joined by Ranjit Devraj, environmental writer, someone who's residing in Sukhdev Vihar, which is really the epicenter of where this mess is. Priyanka Kakar, national spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, joins me. Lloyd Mathias, business executive and independent director, is also with me, and Anika Mehrotra, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me on this debate. Let me begin with you, Ranjit, since you stay in Sukhdev Vihar. How has this plant been allowed to operate for, I believe, the 12 years it has been in existence, despite it being known fairly well within the region of the problems it has been creating?
Well, it's a mystery to all of us how the plant has been allowed to run. It has been repeatedly fined. It has been issued show cause notices by the ministry, and yet it not only continues to operate, it actually thrives. Because the ministry has had capped expansion at 23 megawatts, and they mysteriously get permission to expand to 30 megawatts and increase the tonnage of waste going in. It is as if each time they violate the law, they do even better. In fact, it is a violation of the Delhi Master Plan, the Master Plan 2021. It's a clear violation of the Master Plan. It's sitting in the wrong place. Basically, a plant of this type should be sitting on a landfill. So there's no landfill anywhere near Sukhdev Vihar. It should be sitting in Tughlakabad, which is the nearest landfill. Now, they already have a plant there now. But how do you justify a plant sitting in a residential area, and that too only 40 meters from Sukhdev Vihar? See, we have no problem with them having any technology or any plant, or they can do whatever they want, but they should not put it at 30 meters from a residential area. That's all we are saying. In fact, that is what the case in the Supreme Court is. The litigations in the Supreme Court basically is that the plant has no business to be where it is because it's poisoning the residents. I myself don't live there anymore. I've quit the place a long time ago. You can't live there. Anyone.
And did you have to quit it because of the problems being created by this plant?
Yes. I was a victim of COVID, after which my lungs became weak and I couldn't live there anymore. And that must be the case with a lot of people. I know many people who have just simply left, they've rented out or just left the place. It's impossible. The government should take notice of what they do. Sorry?
I want my political panelists and I want my viewers to reflect on this irony which is being pointed out by Ranjit Devraj. This is not a dump yard. This is not that garbage mound which you see in Tughlakabad, which you see in Ghazipur, which is already causing people to move out of the area. This was supposed to be a solution to those problems, yet it is doing exactly what the problem was doing in the first place, perhaps even more given the obscene amounts of toxic metals and discharge it is coming out with. Let's start, of course, with where things started going wrong first. And on that note, let me bring in Anika Mehrotra, spokesperson of the Congress. Anika ji, if I can go through a brief timeline of this events. In 2006, the Delhi government under late Chief Minister Sheila Dikshit decides to set up this plant. In 2009 itself, a resident files a complaint in the Delhi High Court pointing out exactly what Mr. Devraj was saying, that this violates the Delhi green area laws. It has no business being in Sukhdev Vihar. This was in 2009, 2 years before the plant was even set up. In 2011, the plant becomes operational. 2012, January, in fact, the plant becomes operational. Within 1 week, residents start noticing that there is dust being accumulated in their homes, on their cars, in their clothes, and they start complaining of respirational problems here. In 2013, this case was transferred to the NGT, and the NGT finds out that it was using untested and unapproved Chinese incineration technology. Now, this was a series of events happening. Well, to use a phrase from our current Prime Minister, it was a double-engine sarkar of the Congress in both Delhi and at the center. Why was this not nipped in the bud?
Sir, I think garbage has always been a matter of great concern as far as Delhi is concerned. The Balswa, you can see it's heap and heaps are piling on. And similar goes in other places. I think garbage collection, garbage disposal, it has been of great concern. The thought behind was it to convert it into, renewable energy where it could be useful. The thought was obviously, for a benefit. But unfortunately, yes, you're right. If things were wrong, I think action should have been taken. But having said that, you see, the company who was doing it also needs to be blamed. But the other thing with garbage collection. Remember one thing, sir, the MCD was either with BJP or now with AAP, but the garbage collection was always never done appropriately. It was, mixed with plastics to the vegetables, everything was all combined. So there was no segregation of the garbage. I feel.
Anika ji, I'm sorry. Anika ji, that's not
things,
what the NGT found out.
No, I think
And that was not the problem, was not the collection of garbage. The problem was with the disposal of garbage, which the NGT has pointed out very clearly.
It starts with everything from the very beginning, you see, from the scratch. If things go correctly, I think when the emission would not have been that toxic. And more so using, technology which is not appropriate, that's a matter of concern. Yes, I think be it Congress or be it the present regime, we should have been careful about that. We can't take a risk of the health of the people, especially in the residential area. These thoughts should have been taken place, irrespective of which government was. I stand by it, and I'm sure the coming government, which is in power for the last 10 years, should now put its foot down. If the Congress was in power and allowed it to happen, despite, hiccups or whatever, it didn't start, but now it has been 10 years. What action has been taken? So the present issue still remains. And after COVID, I think is all the more reason to be more concerned. Look at the way people are, just abruptly at the age of 40, just collapsing. So I think, yes, a serious thought in terms of the central government as well as the state government needs to be
Anika ji, the only takeaway I can get from it is essentially an admission that the Congress messed up and deservedly perhaps it was voted off power, at least in Delhi.
Sir,
and I take your point that, of course, what about the stakeholders who have been, at least in this case, let's admit that the inception happened was a problem. You admitted that. Let's now talk about the stakeholders in the present, one at the central level, one at the state level, and both parties at some level sharing responsibility of the MCD over the last 10 years. Let me bring in the BJP, Dr. Anil Gupta, spokesperson. Now let's talk about all the things that happened under the BJP. In 2017, the NGT, which I stress again comes under the Environment Ministry, imposes a fine of 25 lakhs on this project, on this plant, for failing to meet standards is the term. Yet the NGT refuses to shut down the plant, says that we will monitor it from now. I don't know whether there was any noticeable change. I don't think any noticeable change happened, because 3 years later, now the CPCB imposes another fine of 5 lakhs. So this is now a plant which has been fined twice by two different bodies for a total figure of 30 lakhs. Yet in the same year, in 2020, the Environment Ministry decides to expand the capacity of this plant by almost 50% from 16 megawatt to 23 megawatts. On what basis, sir, are these decisions taken? These are all decisions, by the way, which have been countered and have been appealed to by the residents in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, good evening to you and all the viewers. See, NGT is an independent body. It is a judicial body. They take their own decision and it has to be implemented. As far as this plant is concerned, I tell you technically 2-3 points. See, lot of the raw material for this plant is hazardous in nature. Though it is waste to energy plants, but lot of rubber products, plastic products, and all these types of material incinerated. But I think it is a faultily designed. And second thing is this, the ash generated in this plant is, as per the act, is hazardous in nature, and Delhi government should have made an arrangement to scientifically dispose of that ash. For last 10 years, the Delhi government has failed even to identify the site for the disposal of a ash that is family. I remember 2 years back, there was the public hearing by the Delhi government department for expansion, wherein the local residents have also protested. In spite of all that, the Delhi Government Environment Department has had allowed the expansion of this plant. So they should be answered. They should answer why this expansion is allowed and why the management of this hazardous has not been
Dr.
care
Anil
of.
Gupta.
Second thing, the incineration which are there in these plants, I think they are generating lot of hazardous gases, which are hazardous in nature, like NOx, sulfur, and all these things. And it is the duty of the Environment Department of Delhi government to take action. NGT is a judicial body. Whenever the case is gone, I still remember
Dr. Anil Gupta,
when the expansion procedure.
Dr. Anil Gupta, with all due respect, do you understand how ridiculous your argument sounds? Now, you said that it is a plant which is emitting toxic gases. It's a plant which is coming up with toxic waste which needs to be disposed. This is a plant which is supposed to take care of toxic waste and convert it into clean energy. This is not a garbage producing plant. It is a garbage treatment plant which is creating more damage than good. So it's not any government's job to dispose the dump coming out toxic waste. It's this plant's job which is not doing, which is why the samples show 19 times the amount of cadmium, 11 times the amount of manganese, 10 times the amount of arsenic, 4 times the amount of lead, and 3 times the amount of cobalt. Clearly this plant, according to the investigation, according to the cases so far, according to the NGT, according to the CPCB, has not been doing its job. Now, my question is, this was known at least to the Ministry of Environment and Forests. Why then was a decision given to expand the capacity of this plant in 2020 from 16 megawatt to 23 megawatt?
This is what I mean to say. See, whatever you have mentioned is right. But it is the expansion, this go-ahead was given by the Delhi government. You can check the records. It is the duty, and who checked this plant? Delhi Government Environment Department. Whose responsibility is to dispose the ashes? It is the Delhi government. It is not the central government. This is the state government plant. See, when NGT came into picture, they say, why this exists? Who is monitoring this? It is the pollution control body. They monitor these things. The Environment Ministry of the Delhi government maintains this. You can check the record. Delhi government has not made even a single scientifically disposal site for ashes. If you go by the records, the ash generated by this plant is hazardous in nature that cannot be disposed in the normal landfill site. It is to be scientific. It is to be disposed of scientifically. Wherein this Delhi government has failed to dispose of.
That was the plant's job, and the plant is not doing it. My point is, who's holding this plant accountable? Let me then bring in Priyanka Kakar, national spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi. Priyanka, you have heard complaints, you have heard statements coming in from both the Congress and the BJP guests, and in some way, I think our viewers have been able to read between the lines. Both parties acknowledge or can't counter the fact that there were lapses which they could have taken care of. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the Delhi government, in which case the Aam Aadmi Party has been in power for 10 years. Has there been a single mention or any single call by the Aam Aadmi government to ever pull this plant up? Because it's been run in a PPP model in which the MCD is in collaboration with the private entity which runs this plant.
Good evening to you and all your viewers. I was listening to all the panelists, and it is quite unfortunate that neither the Congress nor the BJP was at all considerate of the residents sitting here, their concern. Now, see, the Congress is trying to blame the AAP, saying that, oh, it's all right if we set up a plant in 2007 which was non-compliant, or the BJP, which is continuously asking you to check the records and see that the Aam Aadmi Party only could have given this permission to expand the plant, expand the capacity of the plant, which is incorrect legally, and everyone is free to check it online. The central government only could have expanded the capacity of this particular plant, which it did in 2020, like you said, which it again did on 7th January 2023. Now, what has happened, like you rightly pointed out, that in 2017, the NGT had imposed a fine of about 25 lakh rupees on this plant because it was non-compliant. And now, subsequently, the Delhi government has been completely diligent and looking at it. And as we speak today, from what I am aware, and I can tell you with utmost authority, responsibility, that the ash content of this plant as it stands today is as per the prescribed norms that are enlisted in the Environment Protection Act. Be that as it may, because this report has been printed, we will look at it again. We will look at all the complaints that have been mentioned in this report and re-examine the entire situation. We will do that. Now, what has happened? This report, it is an investigative report which was conducted over 5 years. Certain portions of this report are from, say, the 3 years previously or 2 years previously, when this plant was non-compliant and when it was fined. But be that as it may, like I said, all these concerns have been duly noted, and we will re-examine the issue, and we are here for our citizens, and we will do the best.
So you're
whatever
saying,
best
Priyanka
is
ji,
required, we will be doing
saying,
that to
Priyanka
favor
ji,
our
on
citizens.
good authority that right now this Okla Timurpur plant is emitting all its emissions, whether it be in the form of aerial emissions, whether it be in the form of solid waste emissions, which is within the guidelines. That's what you're saying. Now, in that case, I call your attention to a source-based MCD statement that we
yes.
received today. My colleague Nikhil had reached out to the MCD, and all we got... No, I just want to put that out for our viewers here. A 2-line statement that is that this matter is already before the NGT and sub judice in the Supreme Court. Fair enough, that's the truth. Then the statement comes in. This has been published by the New York Times, and we all know it has a vested interest. Now, I don't understand why the Aam Aadmi Party suddenly decides to drag in the vested interests of New York Times into it. It's something which the BJP has been doing it for so long, saying that New York Times and other Washington Post and other media outlets are biased against Indian interests.
So perhaps, because it is a source-based news, perhaps it was released by the BJP. Like you said, they are the ones who dismiss any report which doesn't favor them. I have told you on good authority that we will re-examine the issue. And I have told you on good authority that as we speak, the emissions from this plant are compliant as per the Environment Protection Act.
Okay. Lloyd Mathias, thank you for waiting very patiently. I come to you probably to have the last word, as someone who probably represents corporate India in this panel. And again, the intention of this debate is not to target the Jindal Group, which is in plant, because it's evident that there were multiple opportunities from multiple political stakeholders to bring this plant into check. It has not been done so. However, this is not a textbook case of how great plans of technology coming up with waste to energy, killing 2 birds with 1 stone ultimately becomes a massive failure if after almost 12 years of this project, forget cleaning up the system, it is creating more trouble and endangering the lives of 1 million Delhi residents every day.
Thank you, Ritangshu, for bringing up this very important issue. I think what's happened, and I would say really over the last 12 years, is completely shocking and unacceptable. Here we are endangering people's lives. And what one saw in a good part of this show was a lot of buck passing between previous governments, incumbent governments, center, state. I think the reality is when any issue as serious as this comes into play, I think it's incumbent on all, the center, the state, the local bodies, to sit together and solve it. I also would certainly say that what has happened, without mentioning specific corporates, I think if a particular body has taken responsibility for using waste disposal to generate energy, waste to energy is directionally a great way, I think they also need to be held accountable. If that's the commitment they made, and one is noticing that waste disposal is actually causing more harm than good, I think that's a very, very serious violation, right? And therefore, I would say 2 things. I think 1, clearly the laws need to be tightened on this score. I think you understand that Delhi generates 11,500 tons of garbage a day. And 2 is, how do we ensure implementation? I mean, one is seeing a series of violations, right? Expansion permits being granted, no prosecution. So I think it's a failure all around. And it's exactly what's making our capital city today unlivable. I mean, it's exactly the same issues of passing the buck between one to the other. And in this case, even poor corporate accountability. So I think really no one's coming out much glorious in this whole saga. And it's really, really unfortunate.
No, so Lloyd, let me be the devil's advocate at this point. I don't think that our political parties have a complete lack of intent when it comes to dealing or at least giving citizens of Delhi at least clean, livable, breathable conditions here. The point is perhaps the intent gets eclipsed by political considerations and perhaps lack of expertise also, which is why, isn't this a classic case of how perhaps there needs to be decisions taken with taking all stakeholders' board, especially ecological concerns? A project which in 2009, 3 years before it went on, which went on the ground itself, was marked as something that was violative of the Green Code, as Ranjit Devraj pointed out. Clearly, there was something rotten with the very inception and design of it, yet it was allowed to go on, and it's now been surviving for the last 12 years. Once a project is operational, we all know it's going to take a lot of time and effort to get it to stop.
Oh, absolutely. I think the culpability of the initiators is certainly is not being protected. I mean, I think absolutely there's a complete, they have to own up, accountable, and they need to be prosecuted. My concern largely, Ritangshu, is also the fact that it's taken, 12 years, 2012 when this plant got commissioned. And in the interim, we've also had expansions, right? Yeah. I'm not absolving the perpetrators, but I'm just saying that a lot of swift action should be taken. And it's precisely the absence of this action that's actually put the entire Northern India and NCR in particular, making it completely unlivable, right? And there's no sign of improvement, right, at the macro level of pollution. And of course, issues like this, which are even more serious.
All right. Thank you so much, Lloyd Mathias, for joining us. Also, thank you, Ranjit Devraj, for bringing it into consideration. We hope that your ex-neighbors at Sukhdev soon get to live in better conditions soon. And my honest appeal to my panelists who have been joining me, Dr. Anil Gupta, spokesperson of the BJP, Priyanka Kakar, spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, and Anika Mehrotra, spokesperson of the Congress, is that we really need to start bringing in environmental concerns as a policy and not indulge in political blame as the first response. This is a classic case of how good intentions can go so colossally wrong. Instead of shooting the messenger, these cases are sub judice in the Supreme Court. Let's see how the Supreme Court deals with it. But for the time being, we cannot turn a blind eye and say the other person should have taken care of it. Thank you all for joining me on this debate here.